Okay, hi everybody, David Paul with you in the KHOU 11 Weather Center. This is Wednesday evening as I give you your Atlantic tropical update here on September 22nd. It is also the autumnal equinox. It is the day where the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere have the same amount of daylight and nighttime. After today, days begin to get shorter, nights longer in the northern hemisphere as the earth slowly tilts away from direct sunlight and we plunge headlong into a long winter. Atlantic Basin. So we've been busy. 14, 15, 16, 17 named storms so far this season, and it looks very likely that within the next day we're going to get another system named here. That would be Sam. So that would put us at 18 named systems for the season. To remind you, a normal season, the 30-year average is 14 storms. So we've had 17. We're going to have 18 here in the next literally moments, as I think TD 18 is going to turn into Sam pretty quickly. Normal amount of hurricanes is 7. We've had 6 so far. We're likely to make it 7 with Sam. In fact, Sam is likely to become a major hurricane, and if it does, that would mean for the season we would have a total of 4 major hurricanes, Cat 3 or above. Normal is 3, so we're getting ahead of average as long as Sam does what we think it's going to do. As we head into the second half of the season, we've still got about 40% of the season left, and we're already well ahead of a normal season, so this is again turning out to be a busy one. We may run out of names on our first list, and then instead of going to the Greek alphabet, there's a secondary list of names that we would begin to use. Here's the way the Atlantic Basin looks this evening. And still this spot up here, North Atlantic, 40 to 60% chance for development. And again, still on the back burner. This one just looks like whatever is going to form here is just going to kind of sit here and then eventually just meander and fall apart. I don't think this is going to impact St. John's, Newfoundland, Halifax, and Nova Scotia. I think y'all are fine from that. Peter is fizzling. Rose is fizzling. It's TD18 that is cranking and about to become a named tropical storm, and I think eventually a hurricane. And look, it is forecast to become a major Cat 3 hurricane here over the next 5 days. We'll start with Peter, and again, just completely ripped apart. Peter is not much longer for this Earth. You can see it's an exposed center as we look at the visible satellite from the day. We're going into nighttime now in the Atlantic Basin, so that's why it fades to black. But during the daylight hours, you can clearly see an exposed and now kind of ragged center. All the convection being torn off to the north and east by the upper level winds. So this is what we talk about with wind shear. Look at the upper level winds, just cutting right across it, ripping the system apart, decapitating it, if you will. That's a system that's going to weaken in a hurry, and it has. Now just a depression and turning into a remnant low here over the next several hours and moving north and then fizzling out by Friday. And also, if you've been following along, earlier in the week it looked like we might see at least a depression or a weak tropical storm impact Bermuda. Now that looks very unlikely. So Bermuda, this system is just dying before it can give you any type of significant impact. Maybe some increased seas from the south. Big picture, and it's out here off the coast of Africa, center of the Atlantic now that we've got a couple of systems. Rose is fading. TD18 really has got that look like it's about ready to become a named tropical storm or a hurricane. It's tumbling nicely. We'll begin with tropical depression Rose, and it's another one of these situations where not only have the upper level winds just ripped it apart, but if you remember as we tracked Rose, it was developing within an area, a cloud of Saharan dust. That's the light sandy color here. These are surface streamlines. And so that dust is sinking air, it's dry air. Those are the two exactly opposite things you need to get a tropical system going. You need rising air, you need moist air. And so the Saharan air layer has snuffed out Rose. Good. We'll say goodbye to Rose, and as Rose turns east as a remnant low, I did look at the longer range models. This does not look like it's going to impact Portugal, Spain, France with any type of significant low at all. It just kind of fizzles out and is absorbed by the atmosphere. So it really leaves TD18 to be the only real player in town. It is looking more healthy. We've got a nice little counterclockwise picture to the upper and mid-level flow around that. We've got thunderstorms near the center of the tropical depression. So again, a depression means that now we've got an actual closed 360-degree closed surface area of rotation. That's good for helping us forecast where it's going to go, but of course it also means the storm is intensifying. Now we have a center of low pressure that the models can grab onto. This is forecast to become a major hurricane, Cat 3, pretty quickly in the next couple of days. So why would that happen? Well, it's going to be moving into an unsheared environment. Rose and Peter were sheared apart, but this is what an unsheared environment looks like. Now here's the developing system, and you can see there is wind flow coming across the storm from the east, but the storm is also moving to the east. So for the moment, it's moving along with the environmental flow. So that reduces that easterly shear across the storm. It's moving along with that shear, so it's not really sheared at all. Sort of like floating along with the stream. And as we zoom out and look out at the atmosphere that this storm will be moving into, boy, that is a very unsheared environment. Light winds. So for example, where is the shear? Well, here's the shear right in here. So if we had these brighter colored arrows cutting across right here, I would say there's no way this is going to become a major hurricane. It'll be ripped apart. But that's not the case. We have just about zero shear in here. So this is going to be a storm that has a good chance to very rapidly intensify. Not so much warm water, but upper level winds are the biggest factor in whether a storm is going to quickly intensify or weaken rapidly. It's always the upper level winds. And those light winds indicate this thing's going to crank. So GFS and Euro, and we looked at this last night, and if you remember you were with us, this did look like it was going to create a very tight, well-organized low pressure area, both the American and the European, and those two models continue to agree that we're going to get a significant area of low pressure. The models are in very good agreement here, moving very close to the U.S. Virgin Islands or just a little bit further to the east of the Virgin Islands. So San Juan, Lesser Antilles, Virgin Islands, watching this forecast very carefully. You're going to see a tremendous amount of high seas come into the area here. However, it looks like we might avoid a direct hit from some of the northeast islands here of the Caribbean. At this point, the storm is moving northwest. There's a northerly component to its westerly movement. So that's encouraging. We don't want this to hit any of the islands here and impact the people here. And that's, that would be several hundred miles to the northeast if that forecast for the Euro holds, and even further away if the GFS holds. Spaghetti plots are a little more encouraging that what there is of this will be at least in the process of turning to the north as it approaches the islands. Here's the island chain. And as just looking at this, we've kind of got three clusters. There's a very small one that's on a more southerly track. I think that's more of an outlier. We've got a cluster here that takes it close to the Virgin Islands. And then another cluster, and this is there's more model runs here than any others. These are all the computer model, tropical hurricane models and the arms of the GFS. And so there's a significant cluster that keeps it further out to sea and turns it more northerly quicker than some of the other model runs do. So we're kind of hoping that that plays out. We don't want this to impact the people here and put them through more trauma. So here's the forecast track from the Hurricane Center. They develop it rapidly, 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm tomorrow to, 150-mile-an-hour, that's a Cat 3 hurricane sitting east of the Lesser Antilles by several hundred miles as we go into Monday. So still there's plenty of time to watch this. But it's encouraging to see that more northerly component to its overall westerly movement. Maybe it will miss the islands. So where does it go from here? Overlay the upper level winds. Winds at 34,000 feet. So this was going into Tuesday afternoon. So here's the forecast, the storm's position Monday afternoon. It continues on that track, puts it here Tuesday afternoon, and look at the trough. So that should tell the story of where this is going to end up going. That trough, that deep of a trough, should pick it up and eventually turn it to the north and stop this from having any significant direct impacts to the east coast of the U.S. and even the Bahamas. So Bahamas, we're keeping a close eye on you guys. This looks like a setup that would keep it away from the Bahamas, away from Florida, and away from the East Coast. In fact, maybe well away. Good. That's the beauty of heading into fall, is that quite often you'll start getting these much more amplified troughs at the upper levels, and that will grab and turn the storm. And so this is going into Thursday of next week. So this is 8 days out. And if you look carefully, you can see right here, there's a little reflection of where this particular model run thinks that hurricane might be, missing the islands by a significant amount and continuing on that more northerly track and eventually pulled north by the upper level winds. And on this type of a wind setup, it would also stay away from Halifax and St. John's. Now here's Bermuda. So Bermuda, you may end up with a close call from Sam. We'll have to see how that plays out. But it could turn it before it actually impacts even the island of Bermuda. So that type of a track, I think, is the most likely outcome right now, not set in stone, but the most likely. And that protects the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, Florida, and the East Coast from Sam. That would be a good outcome. At the same time, more troughs are coming. Continental United States. So this is next Thursday. Again, this is 8 days out. Here's the trough that's hopefully protecting us from Sam. Here's our next trough. And this one's interesting because in fall is also our second severe weather season across North America, Canada, and the United States. And this trough has my attention because look how sharp it is. So this would be a severe weather threat perhaps across the Mississippi Valley, maybe just a little west of the mid-Mississippi Valley going into next Thursday, 8 days out. And then watch what happens with this jet stream pattern. So that's concerning. You see how this jet curlicues back around on itself? Again, these are winds at 34,000 feet. When they back around on themselves and curlicue back on themselves, quite often it will create a vacuum at the top of the atmosphere, 34,000 feet, right where those winds are curlicuing, bending back upon themselves. And so this would be a severe weather setup for Wisconsin, Minnesota, the UP of Michigan, Northern Illinois, Chicago. And so this is something we'll be watching carefully. Now this is 9 days out, so this is a long range forecast. But just a heads up, this is our second severe weather season across the Great Plains, across the southern plains of Canada as well. And so heads up, thunderstorms could be quite strong late next week as we watch that jet stream make its undulations as we move into fall. And look, another trough setting up as we move in at the same time to the west coast. So the troughs are coming. These also help to inject cold air down into the lower 48. Okay, there's where we stand this evening on the 22nd, on the autumnal equinox. Questions, comments, hit me up on social. Love your comments below. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you like. We'll see you tomorrow with another complete update.